Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Extension Podcast on Wiregrass Grown. And we got a on-location podcast today. Again, I'm Micah Johnson, Houston County Extension Director.
And I'm Aaron Wells, Extension Agent for row crops here in the southeast part of the state.
And joining us today is
Neil Kelly, and I'm an Extension Agent for commercial horticulture, which is all things fruit, vegetable, turfgrass, and pecan trees.
And we decided to do a little episode today on a very, very popular topic this time of year, grass and sod and lawn maintenance, lawn management. So we're going to spend some time today here at a local sod farm. We're going to talk about the ins and outs of sod and getting sod and choosing sod and prepping for sod. And this is take two. We tried this once already, and our experienced camera person wasn't here, and so we had to do this again. But nevertheless, we're here. And just general topics today. Anything going on in the world of ag, Aaron? Anything we're looking to see? Most of our planting's done at this point.
Well, it should be done
Right.
mostly at this point, but with the rain, I looked this morning in our house, we've had rain 9 out of the last 10 days. And
It's a big difference from
that's
a month ago.
that's huge from, like you said, a month ago. I just talking with growers around, I would guess we're probably around the 60% planted mark. And so there's still a lot to go on in the row crop world. So we'll see. We're kind of getting in that critical phase where we're starting to run out of time at the end of the year before we start seeing some cooler weather. And, like we talked about with David Paul, that super El Nino kind of gearing up to be a wetter than normal fall and winter. So a couple of things to kind of be concerned with right there. But as far as the row crop world goes, we're a little behind right now, and which is, like you said, completely opposite of what we thought this time a month ago. And so, but other than that, folks are, trying to get started with spray regimens on the crops they do have planted. And, a lot of things have changed in the last month in agriculture as far as price wise, as far as prices go. So, which is a good thing. So we are seeing some more positive aspects from that side of things as well. So,
Speaking of row crops, we have recorded this on June 1st, and June 2nd we have our row crop short course going on the station, correct?
yeah, the crop scouting school will be Tuesday, June the 2nd. And we're going to be focusing primarily on peanuts and cotton, mostly on cotton, which, this year we don't really know exactly, the jacet, if it will show up, when it will show up. There'll be a lot of good information there for folks to come and learn. If you do not have a very reliable scout, or you do not have somebody looking at your crop, or you maybe not know how to look at your crop, we invite everyone to come out for that. Pick up some good information on that. It's going to be really critical this year if you got cotton planted to be keeping an eye on that crop. So if the jacet does become an issue this year, we saw later in the end of the year last year what they can do to a crop in a short amount of time. So it's going to be critical that folks keep an eye on their crop this year.
Gotcha. All right, and we got some other events coming up. Check the calendar on the Wiregrass Grown website or the local extension website. There's a calendar there. I know we have some things coming up during the summer. Some dates may have changed. But again, like always, welcome back to Wiregrass Grown, the extension podcast on Wiregrass Grown. And we're going to talk with Neil Kelly here in just a minute about all things sod. All right, so let's get started. We swap spots because Neil's the man of the hour today, and we want to put all focus on him, put the pressure on him. But we are right here, beginning of summer, beginning of June. Neil, this time of year, a lot of property owners, homeowners start thinking grass and sod. And, you either already have grass, you're trying to maintain it, or you're trying to improve it, enhance it, or you're just maybe starting from scratch and want to buy a pallet or two of sod. So just start us off, Neil, with when someone's looking at purchasing sod, what's the first things to think about? What do they need to take into account? And just, sod 101, what are we doing when we start implementing sod into our properties?
Yeah, so if we were looking at adding new sod or establishing a new yard, I think one of the first things to do is a little bit of homework on what type of sod or grass species is going to best fit you or your style of management. So there's just a few warm season perennial grasses that we use in this area for turf grass. Centipede is obviously one of those. And then we also use some of your different hybrid Bermudas and then some of your different zoysia grasses. And so all three of these species are really good choices of grass for homeowners or for turf type situations, but they all have some various characteristics. They have their own personality, if you will. They like different types of management, different management strategies, if you will. And so I think it's best to kind of do a little bit of research and homework on the different grass types in this area and find one that's going to suit your management style. If you're one of these people that likes to do a lot of fertilizing and mowing and spend afternoons in their yard and really pampering the grass, then, you know, something like a zoysia grass or a Bermuda grass might be more a better fit for you. So I think it's just good to identify the types of grasses and their characteristics and think about the type of management that works best with those grasses.
High maintenance grasses versus low maintenance grasses.
Yes, because actually some of them
how much time you want to spend on it and how much money you want to throw at it.
Right. Some of them are much more high maintenance than some of the others. And, you know, that's one problem that we run into a lot of times. I'm not going to really say mismanagement, but maybe sometimes over management for the type of grass that the people have. So get a good understanding of the types of grass and kind of what's going to best suit you and fit your needs before we ever get started.
Okay. So walk us through, we've done our homework. We know what grass we want. We got an area we want to sod. What next?
So the next biggest thing I would say is prep work. It's just like a good paint job on a car. The devil's in the details, and it's in the prep work. That's where you really kind of show the quality of a paint job. And it's no different when you get out there and you lay sod. So if you have washes in the yard or if you have uneven ground, you get out there, lay sod on top of that, and it's just going to magnify those things. It's not going to cover them up. One of the biggest ways to get a nice clean cut is to have a nice smooth surface when you're out there trying to mow grass. So really spend your time on that prep work. Make sure that the soil you have is conducive to grass growth. A lot of times we'll go out to yards, they're getting ready to sod a yard, and it's just a hard, slick clay knob. And that's not real conducive to grass growth. If we need to bring in topsoil or make soil amendments, we could go ahead and pull our soil samples, make sure that our pH, that's what we're really trying to focus on, make sure that the pH is the right pH range for the grass that you're planting, and really spend that time on that prep work and have all that squared away and taken care of before we ever go purchase grass, find grass, pick out grass, buy it. Because once we go purchase and buy it, we need to bring it back home and we need to get it laid as soon as possible. It doesn't need to set on those pallets for an extended period of time. So really spend your time and effort in your prep work.
Gotcha.
Well, with your prep work, what are some things folks need to really consider? Say we're starting with a new construction home or something like that. One thing I've noticed at some houses is we have drainage issues. Like the land is that the yard may be sloped to the house instead of away from the house, or there may be areas where water's going to puddle. How important is that? I mean,
extremely. And that's the problem. Water runs one way. It's downhill. Water just does not run uphill unless you pump it. And so if you look at your yard and there's low areas or it's low around the house, then obviously you're going to have drainage issues. And now is the time to fix those. We can only backfill so much to the house. Sometimes we're limited there, so we may have to dig in French drains. And of course, when you do that, you're going to mess up a lot of ground. So now's the time to go ahead, get those French drains dug in and get that land laying so that you don't have these puddles of water. Because you all know, like we've seen the last couple of weeks, when it rains, and you wind up with just mud puddles everywhere. And then we go through these really hot, dry periods of no rain. So, now is the time, the prep work is the time to get that drainage right, to look at the way that land lays and make sure that we're going to not have drainage issues after we lay. Because to fix a drainage issue after you lay the sod, there is no good answer. Everybody's like, well, what do I do about this? I'm holding water now. And it's like, well, we can tear up your yard. We can regrade everything, redo the prep work and get rid of it. Or we just do our best and dig in French drains and it messes up what it messes up, and we just have to fix it. But there's no good way to go back and do that prep work and fix those issues once we've laid grass without tearing up the grass again.
And I guess another issue, you may get to this in a little bit, but while we're kind of on this, before we lay the sod, is if we're going to install a sprinkler system, irrigation system of some sort.
Absolutely. And that's the time to do that, to get out there, lay out your heads, get somebody to dig in all those irrigation lines. Few things I'd keep in mind if I was installing an irrigation system. I would make sure that the installer gave me true head-to-head coverage. You want those heads to hit each other when the patterns overlap. I would make sure that they dig those lines in deep enough. We've run into a lot of this years down the road. Somebody will go to try to aerate the yard, and they punch holes all in the irrigation lines because they were only 3-4 inches deep. They were just barely under the surface of the dirt. So go ahead and make sure those irrigation lines get installed. Make sure that they're deep enough, 10, 11, 12 inch minimum, so that if you come back with some type of hollow tine core aerator, that you're not poking holes in control wires or cutting control wires or poking holes in irrigation lines. And make sure that they get those heads laid out, and make sure that everything matches up on water flow and what you have available, things like that, so that the system will work efficiently.
I've noticed that one, a cheaply done or just, hey, we can get by with this irrigation system is almost worthless.
It really is. I've been to situations where people were watering almost around the clock and they still had drought stressed grass. And reason being is the system just simply could not put out the amount of water that it needed to in a 24-hour time frame to give the grass what it needed.
Or it didn't have that head-to-head coverage like
that's right.
You have dry spots out in the middle.
Yes, you see it almost like little arches that
Yep.
don't overlap, and you would have dry spots in between all those different zones. So absolutely, up front is the time to take care of those issues. And you're right, the cheapest system is not always the best system.
All right, so we've prepped work. We've got our irrigation down. If we're going to do that, the ground's level, pH is just right. So we've chosen our sod. It's time to put the sod out. We got a lot of local sod farms. So sod farms, we talked before, and there are certain times to cut. You don't want to wait too long after it's been cut. You want to put it down quickly. So putting the sod out, first step is what?
So we'll back up one from there and get there. Where do I get the sod? We get that a lot. Where do I buy my sod? And we're lucky right here in this area. And of course, we're just outside of Dothan, and I'm speaking to the Wiregrass surrounding area. But we do have a lot of local sod farms, all along the edge of Henry, Houston County, back through Midland City, around the airport. We have sod farms. You get over towards Sampson, Geneva, we have sod farms over that way. So there are plenty of sod farms in this area that you can purchase sod from a local sod farm. And those guys sell to the public. I mean, they sell to anybody. You'll have to give them a day or two notice because they cut it fresh. They want you to pick it up fresh. They typically like to cut it kind of early in the morning, let the people go ahead, come get it. That way they can get put out by late afternoon, So you could probably even just run a Google search on sod farms, and you'll pick up several in this area. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with buying direct from the sod farm. Just reach out to those guys. You got to figure out how much you need. So you need to measure the area that you're laying sod and just figure a surface square footage. And that'll kind of let you know how many pallets you need. Typically, you're going to have somewhere around, give or take, 450 square feet per pallet of sod. And so that kind of lets you figure as to about how many pallets of sod that you would need. So that would be a place to start. And then when I get the sod home, what do I do next? Well, a month ago, I'd have said run the sprinklers for 2 days before you ever start laying sod, because the worst thing you want to do is go out there and lay nice fresh cut sod on really dry ground.
Hot ground.
Hot ground. Yeah, what it's going to do is that really dry ground is basically going to suck the moisture away from that little square of sod. You almost are always behind. Even if you turn the sprinklers on immediately after laying the sod, the grass still doesn't get a lot of water for the next few days until you get the ground a little moisture in the ground. Now, obviously, things have changed in the last week or two, and we've been getting plentiful rainfall. So, you might not have to wet ahead of laying the sod. But once you do get the sod laid, the next thing we need to do is turn those sprinklers on. We need to be able to keep that sod damp for the next several weeks to give it a chance to take root and start to grow.
And we've talked before, there is watering too much also.
You can absolutely. Now, if you're sitting there running the sprinklers for several hours at the time and it looks like a river flowing out of the yard and down the street, you need to turn it off. Those first several weeks, you're going to want to water in shorter periods, maybe more frequently, but shorter each event. So it may look something like run it for 20 or 30 minutes, leave it off for an hour, run it for 20 or 30 minutes, leave it off for an hour. And we might cycle through that several times over the course of a day, because you got to think there's just not a lot of root system on that pallet of sod, and you've got to keep that water available to that root system. So if it's running off down the neighborhood street or whatever, then obviously our sod is not taking advantage.
And that may vary from yard to yard. I mean,
So it
some will be drier, some might require more water at one time. The key there is just keeping an eye on it. If you see water gushing out, just back off.
That's right. If you go out there and walk and it's spongy and soft when you're walking on it, you probably need to back off for a little bit. Absolutely. Another thing, laying sod, a lot of people don't realize it, but a lot of times this sod will have a little bit of an angle or a bevel, and that's just from where the cutter cuts the sod. That's just the way it turns out. So when you're laying that sod, if you'll pay attention to the edges of the sod and make sure you line those bevels up, when you lay it, it will look like just a perfect carpet. And really try to tuck it up tight, get those seams nice and tight when you're laying that sod. And that goes a long way, like I say, to the finished product.
Right.
Okay. You were saying laying the sod, talking about keeping it tucked up tight and all. What are some instances, like sometimes you see in some areas either plugs planted or kind of that checkerboard look as far as the sod goes?
Right.
And
that's common
that a little bit
because sod is expensive. All this stuff is expensive nowadays, as you well know. But so I can understand what they're doing is they're saving a little bit of money by doing the checkerboard and like that. A couple things you got to keep in mind. Okay, when we lay this sod, now we are actually laying down 1 inch or 2 inches worth of dirt that is cut on the sod. So if I was going to do a checkerboard type pattern, what I would do is I would also have me just some good clean sand, kind of like you see them use at a golf course, just white sand. And I would come back and I would fill in those checkerboards with that sand so that as the centipede or as whatever grass spread through those areas, it was the same level. Because if you don't, when you go back to mow, you're going to kind of skin some of the grass and not really cut the next grass.
Yeah.
And so that's a very good point. If we're using plugs or if we're doing a checkerboard style pattern, plugging's a little bit different because we're not laying down as much root material with the pad of sod, but that's definitely something to keep in mind if you were doing a plug scenario or a checkerboard.
In addition to that, I'm assuming you would have potential for more weed issues as well if you do that checkerboard. So like we talked about the irrigation, by the time to do it right, if you put the sand out there to fill in the gaps, to fill in the differences in height, and then you have potential for more weeds, you really need to sit down and look at the economics of it to see, is it more beneficial to do it this way, or is it just in the long run going to be better to just do a solid sod?
Absolutely. And that's something that each individual homeowner or grower or producer has to look at for themselves and the numbers, but that is definitely a consideration. There are trade-offs when you start doing some of these alternative things. And you mentioned weeds, and that's a good point. We lay this nice beautiful grass and everything looks like a nice green carpet, and we start watering, and maybe by about the middle to end of May or June we start to fertilize just a little bit to kind of help the grass along, and you get this plethora of weeds that pop up. And first thing we hear is people want, what can I spray with? We don't recommend spraying anything the first year of establishment on any kind of grasses. All you can do is just mow, because I know a lot of these herbicides are labeled for use in turf grasses, but they can still also stress the turf grass just a little bit. Now they're designed and developed so that the grass will overcome that and the weeds don't, but at the same time it still stresses that grass. And that first year of establishment, we don't want to stress it any more than it already is. I mean, it's been cut up from where it was growing, stacked on pallets, transported, rehandled, relayed. We've already stressed the grass enough just by nature of what we're doing. So we don't want to add any additional. So we don't recommend any type of herbicide applications the first full year of establishment. Just water and mow is your best friend that first year.
All right, so you got your sod laid, you got it roots trying to get established, you're watering it to help that situation. We're not spraying it. We don't want to slow that sod down or let it overcome that shock of transplanting, essentially. So how long do we need to wait until we actually start doing some mowing or maintenance type things like that on the sod?
Yeah, that's a good question. And it's going to come back again to each specific site or scenario. But what you want to do is you want to kind of check that sod, and maybe you could pull up just a little bit and see that sod, if you feel that resistance like it's starting to take root. What we don't want to do is we don't want to have the ground so wet and the sod still not have taken root, so that when we go out there with a lawnmower, we are leaving ruts or we are pushing pieces of sod, or the lawnmower, if you have a bagger, is trying to actually suck the sod up. So I'm not going to say that there is a set time frame, but definitely a couple of weeks. We don't want to do anything to it other than water it the first few weeks. And after that, it's going to kind of settle, and then you can start to run the mower over it. And to start with, you might mow it a little bit higher, just so that if we do have some unlevel terrain, that the deck doesn't push up fresh grass. Those are the things that we want to avoid. And that goes back to the prep work. If it's nice and smooth and level and flat, that eliminates some of those variables when we begin to mow. And then I would say the next important thing is mowing height and mowing. Mowing on time and mowing at the proper height, keeping good sharp blades on the lawnmower so that it's not ripping and tearing at the grass. It's actually getting a nice smooth cut. And that goes back to knowing the type of grass that you're using and the proper mowing heights. We see a lot of that. People want us really thick, deep, lush grass, and that's not conducive for some grass types. Something, say, like centipede. It's not a real deep, thick, lush growing grass. And what will happen is, over a period of time, that will begin to cause issues. You can get a buildup in the thatch layer in the grass that can lead to issues with more insect troubles. That can lead to disease issues, things like that. And it all stems back to kind of improper maintenance, I guess I would say.
That can be applied not just on new sod, but if you already have a yard with grass in it, the management aspect, people don't always understand different types of grass require different maintenance, different mowing heights. So even if you're not looking for sod right now, if you have your grass is established, check like you said at the beginning, do your homework, check your type of grass and check what the maintenance is and check what the recommended mowing height is. Because a lot of times we get calls and people's grass isn't performing like it should be. And it's just simple maintenance issues. There's nothing really wrong. It's just they may be cutting it too high or too low. So, that can be applied not just on new sod, but your everyday lawns also.
Well, that's right. And, people put a lot of time and effort into having nice yards and having a nice looking yard and landscape. And they call us and say, hey, what's wrong with it? And they're kind of looking for a simple answer, silver bullet type fix. And a lot of times there is not one. It's several different factors that have all played into the overall decline of the turf. And it hasn't happened in just the past 6 months or just the past year. You may have started to notice the symptoms in the last 6 months, but this decline has been building up over the last year, 2 years. And, it didn't get that way overnight. And I think everyone needs to understand we're not going to fix it overnight. We can definitely fix it given time, making a few changes in management strategies, if you will, but it's not going to happen quickly. You're not going to get, go make one application of this, and now all of a sudden it looks like Augusta. That's just not going to be the case. It didn't get that way overnight, and we're not going to correct it overnight, but we can with time and tweaking of our management, say, style, if you will.
And it's not always a complicated answer sometimes. You know, we've gotten calls and people's yards are just too shaded. And they just got to cut some limbs back and get some sunlight in, and maybe the watering regimen's just off a little bit. So it's not always a complicated answer, but like you said, it does take time. Centipede, for example, is a slow-growing, crawling type grass. So if you're trying to fill it in, it's going to take a little bit of time.
It is, and that's another good point you bring up, shade. Everybody loves a nice green grassy yard, and they love a nice shady yard. There's a reason why if you walk off through those woods there behind us that you don't see a bunch of grass growing. And that's because, generally speaking, grass does not like shade. It likes full sun. So sometimes it's as simple as, you know, you've got to decide where that trade-off is. Do I want to trim a few tree limbs and give up a little bit of shade, or because I'd rather have the grass, or I'd rather have the nice shady yard and I'll just deal with a thinner.
And some grasses can tolerate shade a little more than others, but there's no just shade grass.
They are what, and I'm very careful when we mention that, because you're right, they will tolerate it. They do not like it. So you get a lot of calls and people say, well, what's that grass that does good in shade? Quite frankly, I'm going to tell you, no grass does good in shade. Now, there's some like St. Augustine that will tolerate shade, but it still does not like it.
Right. Sun and water is a good thing.
Sun and water is a great thing when it comes to growing grass.
Right.
And two, I would kind of harp back on your original where you were talking about do your research on your grass. If you've got a yard full of centipede grass, don't expect it to look like Fenway Park out there.
That's correct.
Because it's just not.
No, it goes back to its characteristics. It's kind of what we always refer to as a poor man's grass. It's never going to be a really, really deep, lush, green type grass. It's going to have a little bit of a sort of a pale green haze to it. And that's the great thing about it. But what I love about centipede is, see, I don't have a sprinkler system in my yard. So when it's raining, the grass is nice and green, or as green as centipede's going to be. And when it gets dry, it turns brown, and we just mow it the same. And as soon as it rains again, a week later, it's back green. It really seems to kind of handle those conditions. I don't do a lot of fertilizing. And centipede grass is good with that also. So yes, it goes back to kind of knowing the type of turf that you're dealing with and how to best manage for that type of turf, and having realistic expectations and not trying to make that variety something it's not.
Okay. Any other thoughts on site, or any last minute recommendations or thoughts, or it'd be nice if we could have a yard like this.
Yeah, it would see. You're going to lay it yourself. Make sure you have all your buddies over there.
Yeah, it's a great time. It's a good, social event. Lay inside with your buddies, and they'll appreciate it. They all like to get out there. But
so I guess, yeah, like you were saying, kind of final thoughts here is I would say to do your homework before you ever get started. You're getting ready to face it, thousands of dollars if you're going to resod a yard or establish a new yard. So do your homework. You would never go out and spend thousands of dollars on a new vehicle without doing a little bit of research about the vehicle. It's no different with this. Do your homework, do a little bit of planning and prepping, and we're going to run into enough issues down the road that we don't need to create them for ourselves. So, spend that little bit of extra time before you get started in this whole thing. And do that homework and that research and that prep work.
And a good place to do that research is the extension publications. Our extension websites you can go look up multiple types of grass. So we got a lot of people doing good work with grass and sod, and we call it turf, but don't get confused with artificial turf. Like, years ago, turf was AstroTurf, and we say turf now, and some people, the verbiage kind of, we lose it in translation, but we're talking grass here, and Auburn does a good job, and a lot of our colleges do some good research with grasses, and Auburn has an athletic turf major, and we have some cool opportunities there too. I know a kid from Headland who's majored in that, and she got to spend her summer internship at Fenway Park. You mentioned that, and that was pretty cool. I kind of was jealous. I would love to spend an internship working on a ball field somewhere. But it is a science, but it's not a scary science. But do your homework, read up on it, find you some extension publications, call an extension agent. You can call every county's got an office. You can call us, and we'll just probably forward you to Neil. And he's that's his world. And but either way, anybody can call Extension anytime, and we'll do what we can to help. Whether you were trying to look for new sod or need some tips or some guidelines, or if you got current lawn established, or maybe something's happening, we can check it out too. So, Neil, we appreciate it.
Well, thank you. I've enjoyed it.
Yeah, we appreciate everybody stopping by the Extension Podcast again, and go find you some sod and get some buddies and have a good time with it.
Have a sod party.
Sod part. So this will be like this isn't a podcast, it's a sodcast. Sod. Okay. So, yeah. All right. Thank y'all, and we'll see you next time. Thanks.